This video is all about CCTV, and more specifically it's about really bad stuff that was caught on security cameras, and now I'm gonna make you watch it too. I have 3 brand new cases for you, and then at the end of the video, there is 1 bonus case from the Ja'keivious archive. But enough from me, although the whole video is me, you know what I mean. Let's get this show on the road. Love ya. On February 16, 2018, hotel cameras in Taipei recorded 20-year-old Amber Poon Hiu-wing returning from a night market with her boyfriend, Chan Tong-kai, and with them was a newly purchased pink suitcase. That suitcase will become very important very soon, and sadly you can probably guess exactly why. Amber and Chan had travelled from Hong Kong for a Valentine's Day holiday. They had met while working part-time, started dating during the summer of 2017, and regularly shared photographs of their relationship online. She had told her parents only that she was travelling with a friend. Amber was also 3 months pregnant. The couple were due to fly home the following evening. At 1:21 in the morning, Amber sent her mother a WhatsApp message confirming she would return later that day. It was the final message her family received from her. Inside the hotel room, an argument began. Amber told Chan that her unborn baby had been conceived with a former boyfriend. Chan reacted violently, striking her against a wall before strangling her during a struggle that lasted approximately 10 minutes. After Amber's time on this earth ended, Chan placed her body inside the pink suitcase. He separated her possessions into bags, keeping her bank card, telephone and camera before going to sleep in the same room. The following morning, the hotel's CCTV recorded Chan leaving alone. He was pulling the suitcase behind him. He carried it onto the Taipei metro and travelled for around 40 minutes before getting off at Ja'keivious Station. Near the Tamsui River, he removed Amber from the suitcase and concealed her among bushes beside a trail. He discarded the suitcase elsewhere, withdrew money from Amber's account, and boarded a flight back to Hong Kong that evening. For more than 2 weeks, Amber's parents did not know what had happened. They reported her missing on March 5th, after discovering travel documents identifying the hotel where she had stayed. Her father flew to Taiwan and began searching for her. The hotel footage provided the first clear indication that Amber had never left voluntarily. It showed the couple arriving together, followed by Chan departing with a suitcase that appeared difficult to move. Taiwanese authorities contacted police in Hong Kong, and Chan was brought in for questioning. He confessed and revealed where Amber had been left. On March 13th, following a 3-hour search, investigators found her body. Yet the confession created an extraordinary problem. The attack had happened in Taiwan, placing it outside the jurisdiction of Hong Kong's courts. Hong Kong and Taiwan also had no extradition agreement, meaning Chan could not simply be returned to face a murder prosecution. He was instead imprisoned for offences connected to using Amber's money. After his release in October 2019, he publicly apologised and claimed he would surrender in Taiwan. Political and legal disputes prevented that from happening. Attempts to close the extradition loophole produced consequences far beyond the original case. The proposed law would also have permitted transfers to mainland China, provoking widespread fear across Hong Kong. Massive demonstrations followed, developing into the months-long protests of 2019. A hotel camera had captured Chan pulling a pink suitcase through a corridor. That footage helped reveal what happened to Amber, but years later, the man who confessed to ending her life had still not faced a murder trial. On the evening of March 27, 2014, 21-year-old Sophie Colombert finished a 3-hour lecture at Griffith University's Nathan campus in Brisbane. She was nearing the end of a master's degree in international business, achieving strong grades while completing an internship. That Thursday had begun like many others. A camera inside her apartment lift recorded her leaving in the morning, dressed in a beige top, dark jeans and black ankle boots. Hours later, another camera captured the moment that would define the case. At around 9 o'clock that night, Sophie stepped off a bus at the Queensland Cultural Centre. Heavy rain was falling across the city. She carried a large cloth shoulder bag and raised an umbrella above her head. Before leaving the terminal, she turned towards a friend and gave a final wave goodbye. Then she began walking home. Sophie lived less than 1 kilometre away, across the Brisbane River in the View Apartments. Her route followed the Riverside Boardwalk, a path surrounded by bridges, museums and security cameras. During the day, it was busy with cyclists, commuters and visitors. At night, much of the walkway remained open and illuminated. But near the William Jolly Bridge, the route changed. Trees obscured the view. The boardwalk entered a darker, more isolated section between the river and the park. Because of the rain, fewer people than usual were outside. Cameras followed Sophie for much of her journey, but none captured the moment she disappeared. She never reached the bridge leading home. At around 6 o'clock the following morning, someone walking through Kurilpa Park approached a rotunda close to the river. Sophie was lying there without her clothing, partially covered by newspapers and a jacket. Some people who passed the structure apparently assumed she was sleeping rough and continued on their way. Eventually, a homeless man checked on her, discovered that she had no pulse and raised the alarm. Attempts to revive her were unsuccessful. The young woman's identity was not immediately known. She still wore several distinctive pieces of jewellery, including a silver bracelet and a skull ring. Photographs of those items were released publicly. In France, Sophie's boyfriend, Boris, recognized them and contacted authorities. Her family, living in the alpine village of Saint-Julien-Mont-Denis, received the news thousands of miles away. Around 60 officers searched the park, examined the riverside and collected recordings from businesses and council cameras. Divers entered the Brisbane River. Bins were searched, nearby buildings were visited, and police returned overnight to question anyone using the pathway when Sophie had walked through it. Her clothing, shoulder bag, phone, iPad and wallet were missing. An umbrella resembling hers was recovered from the river, although it could not initially be confirmed as Sophie's. The absence of her belongings suggested that whoever approached her had tried to scatter anything connecting the attack to the park.
Foot patrols have been bolstered around the park and officers are interviewing walkers in the hope of finding a new lead. News of the murder has made headlines in Sophie's hometown in northern France. Overseas reports are calling her death mysterious. Back home, uni students from across Brisbane are planning a vigil in the coming days.
We're deeply saddened by this and we're having this vigil next Thursday night in memory of her, to honour her.
The recordings gave investigators a detailed account of Sophie's day, but stopped before the moment they needed most. They showed her leaving home, travelling to university, returning to South Bank and walking alone beside the river. No attacker appeared beside her. There was only Sophie, moving steadily towards the place where the cameras lost sight of her.
And we're currently asking for the public, in particular a certain person who we believe was at the scene around the time of, we believe, when Sophie was killed, and that person we wish to give to the public through the media, if I may. His name's Benjamin James Millwood. He is 25 years of age, he's 180 centimetres, proportionate build. He has a dragon tattoo on the left side of his chest, short fair hair, hazel eyes. This person has come to our notice through speaking to other witnesses and examining CCTV in the area.
10 days after the attack, police arrested 25-year-old Benjamin James Millwood in Coffs Harbour across the state border in New South Wales. Millwood had been staying at a men's shelter close to Kurilpa Park. On the night Sophie disappeared, he failed to return before curfew. He had consumed alcohol and used stimulant substances before encountering her on the boardwalk. Millwood admitted that he grabbed Sophie as she walked home, seriously violated her and repeatedly struck her. He left her in the rotunda, covered her with his jacket and newspapers, threw her belongings into the river and fled Queensland. Sophie remained alive for several hours after he abandoned her, but the extensive injuries to her head proved unsurvivable. More than 2 years later, Millwood pleaded guilty to murder and the extreme violation. He received a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Sophie's family travelled from France for the sentencing. They described a woman who brought happiness to those around her and thanked the people of Brisbane who supported them. More than 2,000 people joined a memorial march and candlelight vigil in April 2014, walking from King George Square to the park, where Sophie had been found, in her French hometown. Around 1,200 people later followed her casket through the village as a brass band played Chopin's funeral march. The final CCTV footage remains painfully ordinary. A student steps from a bus, lifts an umbrella against the rain, and waves goodbye before beginning the short walk home. The cameras recorded almost the entire journey. They simply could offer no protection against the horrors of fellow man. Just a quick one. For some reason, my videos are normally seen by just 1 to 2% of my subscribers. I actually don't know why. Regardless of the reasons, it's making it extremely challenging to keep this show on the road. And I promise I don't like to do this. It makes me feel like Oliver Twist or something. But please do consider becoming a channel member. There are currently 343 of you, and I'm aiming for the crazy goal of 1,000 by the end of 2026. You get things like early access to videos, our behind-the-scenes podcast, and of course my eternal gratitude. Thank you, and I love you all. Now, back to the video. Rhiannon Whyte had always been the person who assumed the best of others. The 27-year-old mother was known for her brightly coloured hair, infectious personality, and determination to make people happy, regardless of how difficult her own day had been. She was the second youngest of 5 siblings, and her family described her as brave, quirky, and almost relentlessly kind. Her sister Alex said Rhiannon would have given someone the shirt from her back if she believed they needed it. In July 2024, Rhiannon began working at the Park Inn Hotel in Walsall. The building was temporarily being used to accommodate asylum seekers, and she quickly became familiar with its residents. Rather than keeping her distance, Rhiannon would sit with them, listen to their stories, and offer support whenever she could. Her family occasionally questioned whether the job was safe. Rhiannon reassured them that security staff were present and that someone would often accompany her to the nearby Bescot Stadium railway station after a late shift. From there, the train journey home to her mother took only 3 minutes. On Sunday, October 20th, Rhiannon worked from 3 in the afternoon until 11 at night. During the evening, several colleagues noticed one hotel resident watching her and other members of staff. His name was Deng Chol Majek. He had arrived in Britain less than 3 months earlier and was living inside the hotel while his asylum application was processed. His staring was described as intimidating and unsettling. At 11 o'clock, Rhiannon finished her shift, stepped outside for a vape, and began the familiar walk across the road towards the station. This time, she was alone. Majek left the hotel behind her. Cameras recorded Rhiannon crossing the car park and approaching the station. Majek followed at a distance, moving behind her across the footbridge. As they continued, the space between them gradually narrowed. Rhiannon called Emma Cowley, a childhood friend she had known since they were 5 years old. The two spoke as Rhiannon entered the station and made her way towards platform 2. It was late and the platform was deserted. The security cameras covering that particular area were not working. Emma remained on the phone. At approximately 11:15, she suddenly heard a high-pitched scream. A second terrified scream followed, then a long breath. After that, there was silence. Emma tried to contact Rhiannon again, while simultaneously calling emergency services and alerting her mother. Nobody yet knew exactly where Rhiannon was or what had happened. The attack lasted around 90 seconds. Majek had followed Rhiannon onto the empty platform, carrying a crosshead screwdriver. He struck her 23 times, concentrating much of the attack around her head. Rhiannon attempted to protect herself, but she was left critically injured inside the platform shelter. Majek took her phone, switched it off, and walked away. At 11:19, a camera captured him crossing a bridge over the River Tame. Rhiannon's phone was thrown into the water below. The sharp implement used during the attack was discarded separately and has never been recovered. 3 minutes later, a train entered Bescot Stadium station. A member of the railway crew found Rhiannon slumped inside the shelter and raised the alarm. A worker from the hotel helped as emergency teams arrived. Rhiannon was taken to Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. Her family were initially warned that she might have only hours remaining. She never regained consciousness, but continued fighting for 3 days, giving those closest to her time to sit beside her and say goodbye. While paramedics worked to save Rhiannon, Majek continued through Walsall. He purchased 3 cans of extra-strength beer and returned to the hotel shortly after midnight. He entered a third-floor room, wearing flip-flops and emerged in white trainers. Before long, he was outside in the car park with other residents. A 9-second mobile phone recording captured him dancing and laughing. Blue emergency lights could be seen flashing in the distance from the station where Rhiannon had been found. Majek had brought the speaker supplying the music. He was arrested inside the hotel several hours later. Rhiannon's DNA was discovered beneath one of his fingernails. Her red DNA was also found on his jacket, trousers, footwear, and a ring he had been wearing. The clothing matched the figure recorded following her to the station, leaving the platform and disposing of her phone. Majek denied everything. Even when shown recordings of a man wearing his distinctive jacket, he claimed it was somebody else. When asked how Rhiannon's DNA had reached his hand, he insisted he had never touched her. No motive has ever been established. In October 2025, Majek was convicted of Rhiannon's murder. He was later sentenced to life imprisonment and ordered to serve at least 29 years. The judge concluded that the attack had involved planning, sustained brutality, and a disturbing composure afterwards. Rhiannon left behind a 5-year-old son. Her sister Alex is now raising him and was forced to explain why his mother would never come home. At first, the family told him that his mother's brain had become too poorly for the doctors to repair. Later, they explained that someone had deliberately hurt her. He has since said that he wants to become a brain doctor so he can save people with injuries like his mother's. Heartbreaking. This is the true story of Megan Newton, a driven and talented 18-year-old girl, a young woman that had already achieved so much and was ready to take on the world. But then, after entering her apartment one night, she would never walk out. So, what happened to Megan? Megan Newton was a shining star in her community in Stoke-on-Trent in the West Midlands. At just 18 years old, she had already accomplished more than many in her lifetime. With an unwavering dedication to academics, sport, and the community as a whole, she was also a well-rounded football player who stood out from the crowd. Her coach at Stoke Town Ladies said, "She loved life and she was a ball of energy, a force to be reckoned with." And a force she was. Her dreams were big, but she was determined to make them a reality. With her ambitious spirit and love for football, she dreamed about securing a scholarship to go and study in the United States. Her dream was to be the first of her family to go to university, and she intended to pursue a career in sports therapy. She had a genuine hunger for football coaching. She coached the Norton Wanderers under-7 side, and she was getting ready to undertake a Football Association coaching course. By all accounts, it seemed that Megan was well on her way to achieving her goals and ambitions. She was on course to leave a lasting impression on the world. But everything would change on the 19th of April 2019. It was a Friday, but not just a normal Friday. It was the start of the Easter weekend, and for 18-year-old Megan and her friends, that meant a bank holiday in the UK. Bank holidays in the UK are an excuse to go out with your friends and let your hair down, and this is exactly what Megan had every intention to do. Megan worked her shift at a local fish and chip shop in Trent Vale and finished just after 10 PM. But the late shift wasn't about to stop her night out. She headed straight home to freshen up and change into something more clubbing appropriate. She met up with her friends at around 11:30 PM. And as is the case with people of this age, for them, the night was still young, and the excitement was palpable. Megan and her friends hit the town first, stopping at a local bar to kick off the festivities. Glasses clinked and laughter filled the air as they toasted to the start of the Easter weekend. But the real festivities were just beginning. As the night went on and the party continued, the group made their way to a popular nightclub where they danced the night away. Megan was in high spirits, giggling, dancing, and proudly showing off her new tattoo. She was basking in the moment and living life to the fullest. The party eventually came to a halt at 2:20 a.m. Not by choice, the clubs were all closing. Meghan said goodbye to her friends and made her way to a nearby taxi rank so that she could catch a cab back home. Little did she know that this seemingly routine journey home would become a fateful turning point in her life. When Meghan got to the taxi rank, there was already a long queue as other partygoers all seemed to have the same idea as her. Everyone just wanted to get home. Knowing that her wait would be a long one, she braced herself for a tedious wait while standing in line. Waiting for a ride, Meghan ran into Joseph Trevor, an old friend from school. Well, friend was a stretch, more like acquaintance. They saw each other out and about on nights out and would say hello. Their shared love for football often sparked conversation between the two. Joe, as he was more commonly known, also seemed to have a bright future ahead of him. He was a semi-professional footballer. He was the son of 2 police officers, and although his parents were strict, he had a normal upbringing and grew up in one of the most affluent parts of Stoke-on-Trent. He was in the process of studying for his A-levels, and he had already secured a scholarship to study at an American university. But it seems that, despite his promising future, his path was far from certain. Unlike Meghan, he appeared to lack the drive and determination needed to succeed. He wasn't really willing to make the sacrifices needed to reach the very top. Despite his relatively comfortable life, he was prone to getting into trouble at school, and his illicit substance use was a constant source of concern. In fact, while standing in line with Meghan that evening, he told her of the disastrous night that he'd had. He said that he was at the same nightclub as Meghan and her friends, but he had been focusing on drinking excessively and indulging in illicit substances. It was at this nightclub that a bouncer caught him with a bag of ketamine, and this then resulted in a run-in with the police. Joe, however, was let off with a warning. He told Meghan the last thing he wanted was to face his police officer parents at home while still under the influence. He told Meghan that he was already in trouble with the police, and he didn't want to go home intoxicated and get into any more trouble with his parents. Desperate for a place to stay until he sobered up, Meghan handed him her phone so that he could call some friends and find someone to help him out. However, none of his friends answered his calls. It seemed that Joe was now in a bit of a pickle. In a moment of compassion, she offered her couch as a refuge for the night, and Joe gratefully accepted. Little did she know that this act of kindness would spark a chain of events that would change everything. While in the cab on their way home, Joe actually received a text from his dad asking when he'd be returning home. At this point, Joe lied and said that he was staying over at a male friend's house. Meghan and Joe are then seen walking on the side of the road on their way back to her flat. They eventually arrive at her apartment at around 4 a.m. Nothing seems to be out of the ordinary. They are quite jovial as Meghan tries to unlock her front door. Joseph can be seen standing behind her. He takes a quick glance to his left and to his right, almost as though he was scouting his surroundings, checking to see if anyone spotted him arriving home with Meghan. Was this just a normal reaction, or was it an indication of the darkness that lay ahead? A few moments later, the door is unlocked and Meghan enters her apartment, with Joe following closely behind. This is the last time that Meghan is seen alive. On the morning of the 20th of April 2020, another resident at Meghan's apartment building made a gruesome discovery. Whilst taking out the trash, they found Meghan's apartment key and fob, stained with a reddy brown substance. In their building, you couldn't get in or out without a fob. If Meghan's fob was in the trash, where was she? Alarmed by the sight, they raced to Meghan's door. They pounded at it with urgency, desperate for a response. When the neighbours heard nothing back, they used the stained keys to gain access to the flat. There they were greeted with an even more gruesome discovery. The apartment was eerily quiet. In Meghan's bedroom, they were confronted with an horrific image. She lay lifeless and unclothed on her bed. The multiple visible wounds suggested this wasn't an accident. Someone had ended the life of Meghan Newton. When police arrived to investigate, they noted that there were no signs of forced entry. Meghan must have known the attacker. She would have had to have let them in herself. And once she did, she was throttled, intimately violated, and jabbed a total of 9 times in her neck and back with a sharp implement from her own kitchen. Police immediately turned to the CCTV footage from her building. At first, it appears to be just a young couple coming home after a night of fun, but what lies beneath the surface is shrouded in darkness and deceit. As she fumbles her key and gleefully makes her way into her flat, she's closely followed by Joseph Trevor. Their mood appears to be happy and nothing is out of the ordinary. The two are seen entering the apartment shortly after 4 a.m. And then, less than 90 minutes later, Joseph is seen leaving the flat again. But this time, he's alone. His demeanour is calm and he appears relaxed. He's then seen exiting her apartment building and strolling through the parking lot. He goes to the nearby bins where he discards Meghan's apartment key before leaving her complex. Footage from a nearby camera captures Joseph as he's walking down the street. At some point, he turns his hand to look at it, and the camera captures him with blood on his hand. Joseph here was quite literally caught red-handed. Joseph Trevor walked for another 15 minutes towards a bridge over the A500. This is a major dual carriageway in Stoke. Here he sits down at the edge of the bridge with his feet hanging over the road below. We can only guess the thoughts running through his head at this time. Was he reliving the last hour? Was he thinking about what had occurred within those 4 walls? Was he thinking about how he had thrown his scholarship, his life, away? He wasn't there long before catching the attention of a driver passing by. Alerted by the sight, the driver notified the authorities, who immediately rushed to the scene. The police apprehended Joseph and took him to the Heartlands Hospital to evaluate his mental state. They were determined to keep him from harm. After concluding that he was not a danger to himself, they called his father to take him home. Little did they know, they were releasing a cold-blooded killer. After reviewing the CCTV footage, police rushed to Joseph's home and brought him in for questioning. The evidence was already, frankly, damning. They just needed a confession. But that wasn't what they got. Joseph admitted to the police that he had been with Meghan the previous evening, and he told them that they were consensually intimate before his memory went blank. He said that he didn't remember what happened after their relations, but that he was 100% certain that he hadn't attacked Meghan. He wasn't a killer, he knew that much, but CCTV suggested otherwise. The police arrested Joseph Trevor for the killing of Meghan Newton on the same day. Despite the mountain of evidence against him, Joseph Trevor remained steadfast in his claim of innocence. He intended to plead not guilty, forcing Meghan's grieving parents to endure a full trial and prolong their suffering. After 10 months of gathering evidence, the state was ready to bring him to trial. They believed that he was responsible for the heinous crime involving Meghan. Before proceedings could even begin, Joseph stood up in court. He shocked everyone in the room by declaring his guilt. The once defiant defendant now stood before the court ready to tell his version of events. He told the court that when he was 15 years old, he was accused of violating a 14-year-old girl. There were no charges and the matter never even went to trial, but the stigma followed him for years. He was bullied at school, nicknamed and Rolf Harris. By the way, just Google it at your discretion if you're not from the UK. And on the night of the crime, he ran into Meghan in a taxi rank. The two had a brief conversation and Meghan apologised to him. She told him that she was the one responsible for spreading these rumours around the school. He said that when Meghan admitted this to him, it had brought up old demons. And it was ultimately this admission that drove him to murder. The prosecution, on the other hand, didn't believe a word of Joseph's version of events. There was nothing in Meghan's character that suggested she would start those rumours. She had always been nice to him. The prosecution argued he wasn't triggered by a confession, but instead by rejection. They argued that when Meghan invited Joe back to her place, it was purely platonic. She was being nice and he was in a sticky situation. He was having a bad night and he had nowhere else to go. Joseph's motives for going back to her place were for intimate relations, and he most likely tried to come onto her when they got back to her flat. When she rejected him, Joseph flew into a fit of rage. Joseph was used to getting what he wanted, but he couldn't have Meghan. When she said no, he ended up throttling her for 15 to 30 seconds, and he ultimately jabbed at her with a sharp implement. This case was surely black and white. The judge agreed. He stated, "The attack on her was driven and motivated by your serious and violent sexual conduct. You violated her. You went on to strangle her. You went on to arm yourself with an implement from the kitchen area and jabbed her no less than 9 times. There was no question of whether or not he was guilty, only of what his punishment would be." Joseph Trevor was sentenced to a minimum of 21 years and 65 days in jail before he could then be considered for parole. This means that he may be back out on the streets by the time he turns 40, a fact that Meghan's parents find difficult to digest. No amount of time could ever bring their loving daughter back, but they believe the light sentence Trevor got is much too lenient for the heinous crime that he committed. Thank you so much for watching. I'm uploading daily true crime and dark content here on this channel, so make sure that you're subscribed, hit like on the video, and also drop a comment so you get shown more of my stuff. Please do be careful out there, and I'll see you tomorrow.